Welcome all. So we would be starting with the second set for the questions for your 2017 GS paper 1. In the first set, when we discussed, we saw there were questions from NCERT. As we'll move here, you will see numerous questions that were directly from NCERT. So if you have covered NCERT class 6 to 10th and preferably up to 12th, then everything is all set even for your mains. So let's start with the very first question. Now this is the 11th question in sequence, but the very first question for today's class. The question talked about the spirit of tolerance and love is not only an interesting feature, has been basically an interesting feature from the past times and is seen even in the present time. Now in a question like this, when you are trying to elaborate certain facts from this, you have to mention exactly the historical development as well as the present approach. So you can start either ways. You can first take out the present approach. Okay, under the constitution we talk about a secular nation. We talk about tolerance towards all religions, so that's how you can start with, or you can start with during the Ashoka period, during the Maurya period, or so on and so forth. So there could be different ways of giving an answer to the same question. So the approach of each and every candidate would differ while answering the question for your UPSC. Now here, when we talk about tolerance, let's first talk about the definition of a tolerance. So that's another way of starting the question. So we say it implies a kind of disposition to tolerance or allow the existence of belief and the practices of others to occur. Rishu has a question regarding the HSC Haryana. So definitely the state PSCs are very similar to your UPSC. So most of the topics remain the same. NCERTs have to be covered. Only the sections specific to your state have to be dealt with separately. Otherwise, more or less your preparation strategy and your methodology would remain the same for preparation. Now under this, coming back to the topic on tolerance, as I said, you can start in either ways. So if we talk about the religions, let's say in Jain doctrine you have Anekantvad as one of the approach. You have Hindu approach where you have the Ishtadevta and the Adhikar as one of the approaches. So those are the different approaches that we have been working on through the time, through the generations, through the various religions. Similarly, if we talk about the past, as I said, during the Ashok period, you had the Ashoka's wheel of law, the Ashoka's dharma that was talked about. Similarly, you had the various councils, the Buddhist council, the educational councils that were established during that time that aimed at promoting the information and education. Saurabh has a question for GS paper 4. I believe next Wednesday we have GS paper 2 session, and if we go on the same pace, GS paper 4 might be left off, but in that case we would arrange some extra classes and have all the 4 paper covered probably before your mains examination. We will try our best. Okay. Ajay has a question. Can we add other information related questions in the paper? So yes, you can definitely add other information that's related to the question in the paper. Definitely that's a good strategy to score different from other candidates. Okay, so in the present era, what we say has been done. Removal of sati, abolition of sati, then we talk about removing untouchability. We talk about bringing in right to education, removing any kind of recruitment barriers based on the surnames, based on the caste, based on the creed, providing equal stand for all people from different backgrounds, no intolerance on skin color. Apartheid is something that has been totally removed. So those are some of the things that have taken into consideration, and these are some of the points that you can mention while answering your question. The next question is how the decline of the traditional artisan industry in the colonial India crippled the rural economy. So definitely during the British period, during the colonial period, what was the idea was most of the raw material was fetched from India and exported to Britain. As a result, you had an industrial revolution in Britain, and in India there were two things surviving at that time. First was the agriculture, the second was the rural art and craft. With the cheaper goods coming in from the foreign markets, what happened was this rural market was totally destroyed. So that was again another important thing that we need to understand and work around. So that's something that's being focused in this section. So handloom work, jerry work, leather work were some of the major industries that were having good substitutes from Britain, and as a result the local art and craft suffered a lot during the colonial period. So that's the crux of the question here that you need to bring about, how the developments changed, the need for the reform and the cheaper substitutes that were coming or flowing into the Indian market during that time. Now Ritvik has a question about essay. So essay, we already have a lot of practice essays on Doorstep Tutor. You can just go and practice there. Essay, we also have covered some of the essay writing sessions. You can just search the YouTube Examrace channel and go on to the channel. There you would have a search box. You can search essay answer writing. You would find the videos on how to write a good essay. The next question, so here we focus on three issues, that's the cheap import, the industrial revolution that took place in Britain, and ultimately the idea was there was a decline in the source of livelihood for the rural people because of all the things and the cheaper imports that were coming in. The next question, a very direct question. The question says, highlight the importance of new objectives that were added to the vision of Indian independence since the 20s of the last century. So this is a kind of very direct question from class 10th NCERT chapter 3, that's nationalism in India. So I want you to go back and read or refer that lecture and understand the thing clearly. Ramadevi has a question about online course and postal course, the difference. So postal course is what you would get physically at the home. Online course is the subscription that you would have on the screen and you can read there. Okay, the next is understanding this question where you have the developments in the last centuries, the 20s of the last century, so during 1920s. So I'll just name out the developments that took place. All the rest information is there in this video, so you can just go back and refer that. Jallianwala Bagh, Khilafat movement must not to be missed. Okay. Besides that, you had the Kakori train robbery episode that has to be discussed. The idea of Purna Swaraj, that's the complete independence that was declared during that time. The bomb that was thrown in the Central Assembly during that time. So all this are the flow or the contents that you have to put up in this answer, because these were the things that brought in kind of rapid nationalism or gave a bigger pace to the nationalist movement during that time. Similarly, you had the various associations that were formed. A good example was the Hindustan Republican Association that was formed. You had Chandrasekhar Azad and Yogendra Shukla, who were basically working as the major revolutionaries in Kanpur during that time. Similarly, in Lahore, you had Bhagat Singh, Azad and Rajguru, who basically assassinated Saunders. So all these things are really important and part of the lecture there. So that's a kind of crux that you need to cover for this question. As I said, again a very direct question. The next is account for variations in ocean salinity and the multi-dimensional effects of it. Again, direct question from NCERT class 11th geography part 1. You have the section on oceanography, I guess around chapter 10 or 11 or 12 something. So that is the chapter where you have this detail. So what we need to understand is the variation in the salinity would be caused by the rainfall, the mixing of the waters, the cold current and the warm current, the melting of the glaciers, the rate of evaporation that would be seen. So those are some, the temperature that is there. So those are some of the basic things that you need to understand to basically work around the salinity, the oceanic salinity. Okay, so again, as I said, NCERT class 11th geography part 1 chapter 11th or 12th, you have the complete content. Again, we have covered one of the lectures where we have talked about thermohaline circulation. So thermohaline circulation is another important topic where we have covered the ocean salinity in detail. So again covered, just go back and refer that. The next is petroleum refineries are not necessarily located closer to the crude oil producing areas, particularly in the developing countries. Explain and its implications. So explain its implications. So what we are needing, what we are requiring to explain here is petroleum refinery is one of the industry which is not located close to the production center but closer to the market. Now to understand this, you have the Weber's industrial location theory that you need to understand. So you have the link for the Weber's industrial location theory that we have talked about. Students from geography would better understand it, or I would say rather easily understand it. For this, Megha has a question. We know an ideal way to answer the important things and some tips for perfect answer writing. So as I said, answer writing is bringing out your creativity. So every person has a different style of writing, and I highly emphasize that you maintain your own style of writing. Don't follow or copy others' style of writing, because that's unique to you and that's something that would fetch you much more marks as compared to others. So maintain your own unique style of writing, but make sure you have ample of content, you have good knowledge of the subject. Subject knowledge, subject expertise is must. Unless and until you have that, answer writing does not make sense. So to understand or to write a good answer, you need to have a very good subject understanding. Robin has a question regarding geography optional answer writing. So we have already discussed the previous year's papers since 2014 for geography answer writing. You can refer those. We might have few sessions before your geography optional examination this time. So here, coming back to the question, we would have the Weber's industrial location that has been discussed. We have good examples, like in Saudi Arabia we have Ras Tunar refinery. You have Kuwait where you have the Mina Al Madin refinery. In India, the Jamnagar, which is near the Sikka port. So again, it's close to the market or close to the transportation center, not to the place of drilling of the oil. So those are mainly attributed to better or effective transportation, export options that would be there. Real World has a question regarding history classes, so we would be covering definitely those classes. We are in line with 11th economics and 11th political science as of now. We would definitely start history, and also geography is running simultaneously. So we'll be covering all of those as fast as we can. Okay, so the sixth question, in what way can flood be converted into sustainable source for irrigation and all weather inland navigation? Now this is an indirect question pointing towards interlinking of rivers, and as I said, I believe in the previous lectures also we have discussed this. Interlinking is very important, okay, and interlinking of rivers has been asked for your UPSC mains, I believe, from the last 3 years continuously. So don't leave any stone unturned. Prepare this topic thoroughly and completely. This time urban flooding, Kerala floods, again very important. NDMA guidelines on urban flooding, as I have been telling you in the class on urban flooding. This was very important and this has to be covered. Okay. Now, as I said, this question indirectly focuses on interlinking. So the idea is to drain the excess water from the rivers which are flooding to the deficit areas of, let's say, the desert areas of Rajasthan, the Saurashtra region of Gujarat, the region surrounding the Latur region in Maharashtra and the surrounding regions. So Marathwada region. So those are the areas where we need to basically divert the extra waters from the flooded areas. Recently you had 3 interlinking river projects that took up, and we have those discussed in the video as well as the current affairs section, so you can refer either of those. The next question are the characteristics to be assigned to have a monsoon characteristics can be assigned to the monsoon climate that succeeds in feeding more than 50% of the world population residing in monsoon Asia. Now this is one of the topics that we have already covered in GC Leong, the GC Leong second part, where we have talked about the various regions. We have covered this. So I don't think we have the link out here, but yes, that's another link that you have to follow. Besides that, we have the following videos that we have covered on Indian monsoon, Tibetan plateau, global monsoon, and the tropical monsoon. So all of those are really important. International relations, Ajay, we would be discussing next Wednesday at 11. We would be having our session for GS paper 2. So definitely questions would come up from there. Indian art and architecture, Basavraj, we have already covered few of the topics. We would be covering more topics, not probably before this means, but yes, if you are preparing for 2020, 19 or 20, we would definitely cover many more topics by then. So what are the characteristics of monsoon region? Uncertainty, vagaries in the climatic conditions, vagaries in the amount of rainfall that is being caused, regional variations that are there, spells of hot and dry seasons, dry periods that are being witnessed. The next question, again direct from NCERT, it's only the language twist that's there. The women's question arose in the modern India as a part of 19th century social reform movement. What were the major issues and the debates that concerned the women in that period? So just refer NCERT class 8 history chapter 9 that talks about women, caste and reforms, and we have numerous examples from Ramabai and so on where we have talked about these topics. So that's again something that you have to cover. Once you have covered that lecture, you are all set. Just I would be naming out few of the important things that you have to cover in this lecture. So that's in this answer. So you have the social, economic and the political dimensions, the issues like sati, the issues like widow remarriage that was taken into account. Then you have the contribution of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the practices that were discouraged by Cornwallis and Minto. You had the Native Marriage Act, the marriage of the girls below 14 years and boys below 18 years was forbidden. Later this was changed and the age was increased to 18 years and 21 years. Lack of education, illiteracy was again one of the major things that was discussed. Similarly, you had efforts of Christian missionary, you had the Chandra Vidyasagar efforts that were there, the Woods dispatch on education that was passed on. So all these points we have covered in the NCERT class 8 chapter 3 that we take along. Okay. So we have another question. Mridul has a question for providing lectures for CSET paper 2. Definitely we would start with CSET immediately after your mains are over. Then you have the developments on and the changes for the methods of technology. As I said, Ajay, Internet of Things, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, technology, digital India are really important topics. Some of those we have already covered and you can refer those on the channel. Bapuni has a questions elaborating on the Indian monsoon, what should be covered. So this question talks about the characteristics of Indian monsoon. So you have to cover only the Indian monsoon. You need not to cover the onset and the withdrawal of the monsoon. So if that's what you are asking there. Okay. So the next question here is, so here we as I said, we are focusing on the women reforms. So you have the Raja Ram Mohan Roy's contribution, Desario's Young Bengal movement, the Tattva Bodhini Sabha that was there, Sarojini Naidu, Pandita Ramabai. So all that we have talked about in the NCERT. So I am just naming those here. The next question is a very important question and a very kind of controversial question. Okay. Here the question says you have to distinguish between religiousness and communalism, giving one example of how the former has transformed into communalism over the period of time. A very important question. So when we talk about religiousness or religiosity, we talk about a dedication of an individual to a particular, let's say, religion, his dedication to a particular divinity, a particular god or a particular sect. However, this religiosity basically talks about the various dimensions of the religion, his rituals, his traditions, but On the other hand, when we talk about communalism, it's an ideology. Now this communalistic ideology has three important characteristics. First, a belief that the people would follow the same religion, have same secular interests, and those interests are similar for political, economic and social interests and these are different from the different communal group. The common secular interest of one religion are dissimilar and divergent from the other group, as I said, okay. And the last is the interest of the followers of different religions would not be compatible to one another, and therefore this becomes hostile. So over the period, what happened was this religiosity that existed slowly and gradually changed its space to communalism, and therefore you had the strong movements that came up in the form of Muslim League, in the form of Hindu Mahasabha, which brought about extreme form of communism from the liberal communalism that was talked about by Jinnah and Malviya. So that was a kind of shift that was seen. In the present note, if we want to explain, you have to talk about the Shah Banu case, the Uniform Civil Code, the various cases on ethnic cleansing that have taken place. If you want to give a kind of global picture, a world picture, you can include the Rohingya crisis for the same. So those are some of the important things. If you want to go into regional sections, you can talk about the Muzaffarpur violence that recently took place, the Assam communal violence that took place. So various cases should be brought about in this answer to explain this answer. A very important question even for your this year. So that's, you can definitely mention the role of social media, how it fuels the communal violence, and how this brings about a change in the religiosity and shifts it towards a communalism. So those are the things that you need to focus on this question. The last question for today talks about the growth of the cities as IT hub that has opened up new avenues for employment but also have created problems. So here again, read the question very, very carefully. You have to first mention there are definitely new avenues for employment. So definitely IT companies coming up, you are getting in more jobs, getting in call center jobs and related jobs. Outsourcing has taken up. So new avenues, computer science has developed in India, and so on and so forth. So that's a positive aspect. But then you have to focus on negative aspects, and those negative aspects should be much higher when you are focusing on the positive aspects, as specifically in this question, because of the language that is being asked in the question. So we would focus here on the industry 4.0. So we would talk about how there has been changes that has taken place. Because of automation, you have the jobs that are being lost. The lower jobs are specifically getting more and more marginalized. There is a constant change with IT. So more dynamic behavior that's there. So there has to, the people have to maintain a good pace with the ever changing behavior. There is outdated technology that's there every 2 to 3 years. So obsolescence is again one of the major things. Problem solving and the level of innovation are some of the things that need to be addressed. Okay. Ajay has a question, can we add the rank of IIT in the last question? Not exactly. That does not form the basis, because you have to focus on the problems that are being created because of the IT hubs. IT hubs, when they were established, initially they were very good employment opportunities. You had Cyberabad that was established, Bangalore established as a great IT hub, but slowly and gradually you had IT decline that started to take place because of this 4.0 automation and a kind of job loss. That is something that you need to focus. Ranking of IITs mentioning in this question won't make a great sense. However, it's totally up to you. Okay. Then the real competition that is there, revamping the various business models that are there, and shifting that a constant shift that is seen. So you had desktops, laptops, then phablets, and now tablets, and then you had the smartphones and the mobile phones. So those kind of technological shift which requires a very updated skill and a kind of higher skill set is another important thing that we need to address. So those are the things that we covered here. If you have any questions, any doubts, do let us know. Khalil, you can definitely email me directly at contactus@examrace.com, attention Manishika, so that email would reach me and I would definitely address your issues. Okay, NCRTs, as I said, are must. Shaheen, Bapuni has a question about elucidate, comment, elaborate. We have already covered that in one of the lectures before. So I believe, Bapuni, you can just refer the playlist on answer writing for GS and essay. So that would help you. Thanks a lot. Have a great day ahead.